You want to hear something absolutely insane? Last year, my company made 3 times more than the combined salaries of an L7 Google, a Meta, and an Amazon engineer, all without having to work at any of them. And nobody was more surprised at this than me. The same exact software engineer who a couple years back found out his firm was billing him out at $1,850 an hour per client to 3 different clients, while he was getting less than $150 on the hour. So in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how you can get so rich as a developer that it feels absolutely illegal. And the first way to get so rich as a dev that it feels illegal is to understand leverage. So let me tell you what actually happened when I discovered I was being billed out for $1,850 an hour. My first reaction was pretty much pure anger. Like, I genuinely wanted to walk into somebody's office, kick down the door and ask what the hell was happening here. They were billing me out close to almost $2,000 an hour, right? Times 3 clients. So that's almost $6,000 an hour that was coming in off my keyboard. And I was taking home less than $150 on the hour. And keep in mind, I wasn't getting paid overtime. But the firm wasn't actually cheating me. And it took me embarrassingly long to actually admit that. I just didn't know the game that we were playing. Because ask yourself the same exact question that I had to ask myself. Was the partner of the firm who signed those clients objectively a better coder than me? I mean, the guy didn't even have a CS background. He couldn't even center a div, let alone do anything else regarding coding. And I'm not exaggerating. So what did he have that I didn't have? He had leverage. If you take a look at my math versus his math for a second, this is what it would look like. My math was pretty much 1 hour of my work equals 1 hour of pay, that's $150. And that equation will never change no matter how good I get. In fact, it only gets worse because past 40 hours, I stop getting paid, right? I don't get paid overtime. So, but their math was 1 hour of my work times 3 clients times the brand name that let them charge $1,850 per hour with a straight face. So it was the same hour, the same exact code that I was writing, but one of us was adding while the other one was multiplying. So when you're an employee, you are always on the adding side of that equation. It is a linear relationship because that is literally the deal that you signed. It's in your contract. So where does the leverage actually come from for a developer? Well, it's going to come from 3 places. Number 1, the code itself, which is kind of like, duh. This is the part that should make you a little sick to your stomach in a sense because you're so familiar with it and you've spent your entire life working with it. You work with the most leveraged assets in this day and age that humans have ever invented, pretty much equivalent to social media, and social media came from code, right? So you write code once, it's going to run 1,000,000 times, it works while you sleep, and it never calls in sick. There's a little bit of maintenance work involved, but it has pretty much infinite leverage. And your employer understands this perfectly because that's their entire business model. You were never underpaid because your code wasn't valuable. You were underpaid because your code was valuable and because somebody else owned the code that you wrote. Number 2, other people's problems. So let me give you a real life example of this because this is the kind of deal that I do nowadays all the time. If you take a look at a business that has 2 employees and they're spending, let's say, 15 hours a week copying data between 2 systems by hand in 2026, and that comes out to, let's say, roughly 60 grand a year in payroll for something that a script could do or a workflow automation could do for pretty much very minimal cost. Let's say you automate this process in about 3 weeks' time, if even that, you charge them $15,000. Now to you, that's maybe a day, let's say, of actual coding that you're going to do. And honestly, maybe even less considering you have Cloud Code and Cursor these days. But to them, you just handed them over a machine, right? A solution that saves 60 grand a year, every year, forever. You didn't necessarily have to sell them 3 weeks of your time, nor that 1 day that you worked. You sold them the solution and you kept a slice of what that solution made them. So that's what pricing on value looks like. And notice how your hours never even entered this conversation. Didn't matter if you finished it in a day, 2 days, or 3 days, you charged for the value. And before you think that this is some special me type of thing that only I can do, a lot of founders, one of whom, Dom, in Startup Accelerator, Code to CEO, literally has done this kind of deal time and time again, back when he was in the US with Port City AI and now in Sydney, Australia, doing the same exact thing. So it's the same exact skills, it's just he changed what he was selling. Now, number three, it's a little special. It's about distribution. Why could the same firm that I was making less than $150 an hour at charge me out for $1,850 an hour? Well, it was because the client trusted their name over mine, because nobody on planet Earth knew who the hell I was. So their brand did all the selling before anybody ever got on the call. And this is the part that's completely fundamentally different for you right now as a software engineer, because you can actually build that exact same asset for pretty much free. Every conversation, every post, every video, every case study, every type of testimonial that you put out is a little salesperson that works for you 24/7 without a salary or a commission. And I mean, case in point, one of mine is literally talking to you right now. So let's get back to that invoice, the $1,850 versus $150. After the fact, I didn't take it as an insult. All it really was a receipt, line by line, for all the leverage that I did not own. The code, the client, and the name. So the entire game is getting yourself to the other side of that receipt. Now, the second way to get so rich as a developer that it's going to feel like it's illegal is through communication, because leverage means nothing without communication. Let me tell you a little story about the highest paid person back at my old consulting firm. He was not the best engineer we had. In fact, he didn't go to university for an engineering degree or anything of that sort, and he wasn't even in the top 10. I wasn't over-exaggerating when I said he couldn't send through a div. He was a partner, and he was essentially the guy who sat across from CEOs and managed to translate our code into the only language that they actually speak, which was money. And I used to call this a soft skill, and I mean, it's not wrong to call it that. Most of you probably still do. But I remember one day we were having a gathering, and then I looked at who drives what car in a parking lot. And I sort of stopped calling it a soft skill because I realized there's nothing soft about that skill. In every single company, there's a gap between what the code does and what the business people understand. So if you say something like, I built an ETL pipeline with automatic validation, sure, it sounds cool and fancy, but any non-technical person, especially if the CEO hears it, they're going to hear absolutely nothing. And you might as well be reading him your dot files because it's literally what it sounds like to them. But watch what happens when you translate it. Your team burns $60,000 a year copying data by hand, and I can make that stop in pretty much 3 weeks. Technically, you're talking about the same exact solution. It's the same exact project, but there's a vastly different outcome because of the way you described it word for word. One sentence gets you $150 an hour, whereas the other one gets you that $1,850 per hour. So whoever stands in that gap and does the translating is the person who's going to get paid. That is why that charismatic partner that we had at the firm was making so much money for us as well as himself. And for my entire career at that firm, the partner stood in that gap and actually made so much money from it. So how do you actually learn this? Well, there's really 3 moves, and none of them require you to become a different person. 1, you have to lead in all your conversations with the number instead of your stack. Meaning, you want to talk about the value that they're going to get. So before you say anything about technology, tell them what doing nothing is going to cost them. The hours that are going to get burnt, the money that's going to be leaking out, the customers that are going to be walking away. And if you don't know their number yet, if you don't have a fundamental understanding of the problem, guess what? You're not ready to pitch anybody. So you need to go out and find that information first. That should be your first homework. Second thing you do whenever you're in this type of situation is you need to sell them where they land, not sell the plane to them. Have you ever bought a flight and asked the airline what engine is on the plane? Most likely not, right? Because nobody cares about the engine. All the people care about is, are they going to land at their destination safely? Your client does not care about your architecture. And I know that hurts, but take a breath because it's going to be okay. You want to tell them where they land. That is really the secret when it comes to communication with these type of individuals. And 3, you need to kill every single question before they even ask it. Every unanswered question sitting in a client's head is going to become a discount on your price later on. They're going to be wondering if this thing actually is going to work. How long is it going to take? How much friction is it going to introduce in their workflow? How much of their personal time is going to eat up? So you need to have an answer to all of this up front. Show them the proof, give them a specific date, ideally a range of dates, and say the magic sentence, which is, You give me one login, or you give me like the CTO, or you give me one guy that's in charge of the tech side, and I'll handle everything else. When the risk for them hits zero, the price stops being the conversation, and you can charge however much you want easily and make as much money as you want. And look, I know exactly what the objection is, because it was the same exact mind for years. You're gonna say, Bugo, I'm a software engineer, I'm not a sales guy, let alone regular communication. I don't even know how to go about talking to people about closing deals. And I don't even like talking to people. But look, I want you to understand something. When I started off everything in this country, and you can probably still hear it, English was my third language, and I had a very heavy accent. Accent's still kind of there. And it's not just me. We've had founders inside Code2CO, from Pedro from Brazil, closing deals in Portuguese. We've had Tufik from Bangalore, India, closing deals, same exact way. We've had obviously people from the States, but we've also had Marco from Serbia, Carl from Switzerland, people from all over the world closing deals in different languages with accents. So understand, communication is not a personality trait. You're not born with it. It's a system. And you build systems for a living as a software engineer. You spent years learning languages that compilers understand. Spend 6 months learning the one language that CEOs understand. And then go look at what happens to how much money you're going to make. And it's going to be extremely quickly, because you're going to be the only developer who's not only a genius inside the code base, but also is going to be a genius outside of the code base as well, where you're able to connect the technical to the non-technical, which is the most important part of communication for a software engineer. And a third and final way to get so rich as a software engineer that it feels illegal is going to be having a bias for action. And honestly, this one decides whether this video is going to change your life, or it's just going to become another tab that, you end up closing on your browser. If you take a look at Amazon, they have 16 leadership principles. Do you know which one they grill you the hardest on in interviews? The bias for action, because speed and execution are the most important things in business. And the joke sort of writes itself, because developers memorize that principle to get the job, and then they never once apply it to their own lives. So if you end up joining Amazon, what ends up happening is you studied bias for action to make Amazon rich and never use it to make yourself rich. So sit with that for a second. And let me tell you what it actually looks like when you live that lifestyle of bias for action. The day that ChatGPT launched, every developer I knew had the same exact reaction. They all said, we're cooked. Everybody was panicking. The doom threads were flying on Reddit and on X. Half my feed on YouTube was asking if software engineering is over. And that very same day, I put in my 2 weeks notice and I started working on my consultancy. And fast forward a few weeks, even a few months, I had $258 in my bank account and a rent coming in, which I thought it was going to be over. But go and behold, now here we are. We made it out there. So was that reckless? Probably a little. But I understood something that the masses didn't. When the ground shifts under an entire industry, the biggest risk isn't moving too fast. The biggest risk is standing still while everybody else learns a new game before you do. And fast forward already a year later from that date, I was already making over 6 figures a month. And it wasn't because I was smarter than the guys still panicking, because some of them objectively were better engineers than me. Easily. They had way more experience than me, technically speaking. I simply started while they were still researching. I had a bias for action, and that's been the same exact case with every other founder inside Code2CO. And keep in mind, like I said, I watched this play out time and time again across every single engineer that I worked with. Because the average founder inside Code2CO lands their first client in about 47 days. Not 47 weeks of building a portfolio, not a year of getting ready, in 47 days. And the only variable pretty much is when they start and how much work do they put in. Because speed is literally a money multiplier. And the 47 days average proves it. The engineers who take a year are not doing more, they're probably doing the same exact amount and same exact things, just way slower. And usually it's 3 months of research and 2 months on a portfolio site with dark mode, obviously, that they try to make, that ends up leading to nothing. Meanwhile, the guy who sends 10 ugly messages or 10 really bad DMs in week 1 and gets told no 40 times, but he also lands clients, raises his price, and builds real case studies while the first guy is still picking a font. Because nobody tells you this about business, especially in our software world. There is no course. The market is the course. And every single no you get is going to be a lesson that's going to teach you what to do the next time. And this is where being a software engineer becomes your actual superpower if you let it. So think about how you already work every single day, how your brain functions, how your brain operates, how you work from small pieces, pseudocode. You turn it into something grand. You don't architect everything right off the bat instantly, right? You first do it step by step. You might ship the MVP, you get feedback, you iterate, you make it better time and time again. You need to apply the same exact principle to exactly what it is doing with business. Now, to learn how to fundamentally do this, on July 26th, 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, I'm hosting a live training showing you how to land your first $10,000 plus client as a developer without writing a single line of production code. If you want to see that, go ahead and sign up. The link will be in the description below. It's going to be completely for free. As always, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one.